in the midst of this, a lot of progress and development is also taking place in Nigeria. In the last 2 years, in spite of this violence, Nigeria had the highest GDP growth in sub-Saharan Africa. In fact, in the whole continent, 7.6%. The first half of this year, we grew about 6.6% GDP. And as I've said, last year, 2011, we had the highest foreign direct investment going to Africa, came to Nigeria. And even as I'm speaking to you, recently, for example, we opened up the power sector after the reforms, and we want to privatize power generation and transmission. And so we put up the bid globally, and we have 79 companies around the world who have come into Nigeria to invest in our power sector. There is a rush in telecoms. Now we're opening up agriculture, we're opening up different other sectors that were closed under the bad policies of military rule. So what I would like to tell our people is that the president and all of us working with him and all Nigerians, we know our responsibility to our people. We know that we face these security challenges which are temporary, and we also know that these challenges do not mean that there is a war in Nigeria. There is no war in Nigeria. Preponderant majority of communities in Nigeria are peaceful, and the country is looking at it globally, is largely peaceful, and that is why foreigners, everybody is still going to Nigeria to do business. So, yes, when you are out here and you hear of an explosion and an attack, which is often what the media will report globally, not the progress in telecoms, not the progress in agriculture, not the progress in transportation, not the direct foreign investment that is coming into the economy, not economic growth, not the large market that is very attractive to the rest of the world. Those are not things that make news every day. But for you as citizens, you must know that, yes, this violence that has been taking place in some parts of the north is worrisome, but that government is confident. The people of Nigeria are confident in the future of the country, and that violence will be defeated. And meanwhile, in the midst of all this, a lot of progress. The positives far outweigh the negatives that you hear out here.
Mr. Sir, if I do permit you to continue, we will not have to go round. Okay, let me allow Tunde to take his questions.
Yeah.
Sorry, Tunde, I know there are people already trying to get in touch with us. Just give us a few more minutes and allow the Honourable Minister to give us more information that you'll be able to pick on in the course of the program. Just a few more minutes, I'll be able to take your calls. Just a few more minutes. Thank you. Today.
Okay. Yeah. Thanks for you mentioned. The progress that has been made, and that foreign direct investments coming in, which are quite good news. Just of recent, the National Office of Statistics said, over 60% of Nigerians are living in poverty. Does it mean, the growth in the GDP and all this progress, foreign direct investment coming into Nigeria, does it mean they are not trickling down to the general populace?
Well, thank you very much. First of all, we can't say that there is no poverty in Nigeria. That would be not telling the truth. There is poverty in Nigeria, and there is a level of unemployment that we in government believe we must bring down. And this has been accumulated problems that have arisen for decades of bad economic policies that made the nation look like only government could do business. And all the sectors of the economy that ought to expand and give opportunities to citizens were closed down, were controlled by government bureaucracy. And so downstream sector of the economy, for example, nobody could invest in any refinery, nobody could invest in any petrochemicals, and we kept exporting crude oil that is not making impact in terms of generating the employment, because without the policies that would have made Nigeria the hub of petrochemical industries, which is what we ought to be now after exporting crude oil for 54 years. We knew that there would not be employment in the Niger Delta because the policies were wrong. In the telecom sector, for example, without the reforms of the last 10 years, we had a situation where we had 450 analog lines controlled by government. The economy did not open. In the cement sector, the same thing. Now, for us to arrive at a level where these policies will generate the kind of economic activities, you need reforms. These reforms can't create sufficient jobs for Nigerians at the beginning. So it will take quite a while. But I believe that we are directly going towards a situation whereby the major sectors of the economy, agriculture, infrastructure, social services, industry, telecom, power sector, there will now be agencies generating jobs and opportunities. And that is why the reforms of the president, the transformation agenda, are targeted at opening up those sectors that couldn't grow because the policies were wrong. So in the meantime, we don't expect that we'll be able to confront the question of poverty and unemployment within the next 4 years alone. But even at that, if you look at the Nigerian society today, opportunities are opening up. If you look at cement, for example, we're now the biggest cement producer in the continent, just from the policy of reforms and opening up. Private companies alone are employing more people in cement today than government companies, cement companies were ever doing. If you come to telecoms, we have from 450 analog lines to 100 million mobile lines, and it's the fastest telecom growing market in the continent. So you can imagine the number of young people today that have the opportunities to work in that sector. Now we're targeting power, and I've just told you. In the next 2 to 3, 4 years, I expect a lot of expansion in opportunities for work in the power sector. But at the level of government, we are also confronting poverty through direct interventions. For example, we are not waiting for all these reforms to work before we can confront it. For example, we have an aggressive public works program where we're employing between and about 2 years ago in the region of 1 billion people. In agriculture, we are targeting that if our reforms and the expansion and the credit facilities we have made available to people, about 450 billion naira. If we work at it aggressively, and we see the Minister of Agriculture, Dr. Adesina, has been doing quite some revolutionary work in the area of agriculture, we expect between 2015 to have about 3 to 4 million new jobs in agriculture, in new rice mills, in new irrigation projects that were opening up in parts of the country, which will be made available to private farmers who themselves will employ other people. We also have a UWIN program that is employing youth, giving them credit to set up businesses and employ other people. And all the other channels of government are still employing security services, civil service, and so on. But those jobs aren't yet enough. And we believe that as the economy expands as a result of these reforms, gradually, majority of young Nigerians wouldn't be looking to government for employment. Because in England, tell me how many people are working in government compared to those who work in the private sector. But in Nigeria, virtually everybody leaving school is eyeing a government job because the economy was not expanding. So I believe that as the president continues to work on his reforms, and as the rest of the world answers the way we're seeing now, showing interest in coming to invest, and Nigerians at home and abroad also take interest in investing, the story will change.
Honorable Minister, let me take it back a bit to security issue in Nigeria. A kind of a crisis tends to be brewing between the northern part and the southern part. As the southern part of Nigeria, the government in the southern part calling for state police, and northern part saying no to state police. What is the situation with the federal government in terms of state police?
Always like this, north versus south. And this is the problem with the country. Northern part, southern part, Yoruba part, Igbo part, Hausa part. This kind of psychology must give way to a new discussion. The question about state police, there is no unanimity neither in the south nor in the north about it. Babangida, for example, supported state police. Is not from southern part. He's a northerner. A former leader of Nigeria, former military president of Nigeria, issued a statement that he supported state police. He's not a southerner. He's from the northern part. We had Mark Okero and other people who were former police chiefs from the south saying the place is not yet mature for state police. So the discussion in Nigeria does not follow ethnic or regional lines. I think that we should look at it in terms of what policy will work in view of the reality on the ground. In principle, nobody who has raised caution about state policy is opposed to it in principle. But people are talking about the level of political maturity now and the tendencies that we see on the ground. And I remember the president one day, I think in one interview by the journalist, talking about when do you think it would be right for us to have a state police? And he said, well, initially Nigeria has state police in the Fourth Republic. we had Dogari in the north, we had the regional police in all over the country. But we saw in that republic that they were used for political ends. They were used to suppress local opposition against the regional parties of that time. And when we were at the president, I remember him saying, look, yes, I know that there is a clamor for state police, but I've seen, for example, in the last 3 years, state had state electoral commissions that organize local government elections in every state. And the situation we've had so far is that each time there is a local election run by state governments, it's 100% return for the ruling party. And we're worried about that. We want to see whether we will be able to have the majority at that level to ensure that when you have a local police backed by a state electoral commission, everybody, every citizen will feel equal and participate. Don't forget that even in this dispensation, states like Anambra used to have Bakassi boys, an attempt to establish their own state police, and it went very wild. It went very wild to the extent that citizens in those states were afraid as to the use to which they were put. So we're looking at the level of political maturity. We're a young democracy. Just 13 years, we never had the opportunity like this. So we can't rush every reform at the same time. And that is the point we're looking at. So let's study the country carefully as we gain confidence, as citizens gain confidence, as the electoral reforms take root, as we become more, focused as a nation and move forward. And for example, now, if you look at the security challenges we have, if you have state police in some places, you will be shocked maybe what the situation might be, depending on which faction of that state is controlling the police. Mm-hmm. And if you have a situation in which there are people who are aggrieved and are fighting that state government, to what use will it be deployed? So we should not just think that every reform will come at the same time. I think that we should look at this thing more with sobriety and looking at the state of the nation at the moment. Nobody is opposed to it in principle, but we're looking at the level of political maturity and the situation we have on the ground.
Honorable Minister, you are a very smooth talker. In professional to the core, it is known that politicians in Africa tend to look for the best hands to talk on their behalf, and their talk do not match their performance. Let's take, for instance, the recently concluded Olympics. Why did the giant of Africa perform so woefully? If you had all the time to prepare, is this the kind of expectation we should be looking forward to in Rio 2016?
Mr. Abiola, let me say this first of all.